Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to be looking through day 2 of the World Finals predictions, giving you guys all of my juicy tips. But the only thing is that I haven't got the chance to watch day 1 yet because I'm recording this Wednesday, so I wouldn't have got to see how my day 1 predictions went. Hopefully they went decently, but we've still got 2 more days to catch up on any lost progress. We've still got a lot of predictions, a lot of MVP votes, and a lot of questions still to answer. And trust me, as the tournament goes on, they ramp up the rewards as well, especially if they feel like the majority of people are really behind on the rewards. It's happened a lot in previous World Finals, so don't be too scared if you're doing terrible at the moment. So, as I said before, the rewards are absolutely insane here. You don't want to miss out, so make sure that you're watching it until the end to make sure you're getting the biggest tips in terms of your predictions, so you can get most of these right. So, without further ado, let's just have a look at it. You can see the day 2 schedule right here. We have Zeta, STMN, and Nouns in Group C, and Crazy Raccoon, SK, and Foot in Group D. So, to begin with, this is going to be insanely hard, so just don't go too hard on me if I get some of these wrong, because pretty much all of these are a coin flip. Alright guys, so we're going to be starting off with Group C, of course. It is the first group of day number 2, and boy is this a hard one to predict. I think this is probably the hardest one to predict out of every single one. It's the Group of Death. I mean, Group D is seriously insane as well, but this one, I can't really call it, honestly. So, to begin with, of course, we're going to be going through Zeta. And boy, Zeta have really surprised a lot of people. At the beginning of the year, people didn't expect them to do this good, but they've dominated EMEA. So, just to begin with as well, if you guys are just kind of watching Brawl Esports for the first time this year, it's not the same Zeta as last year and 2021 as well. Those were dominated by the likes of Tensai, Saitampo, and all of those over in East Asia. They're back-to-back world champions, Zeta, the org itself, but not the players, because this is now EMEA roster consisting of Jero, Naui, and Meow. So most of these names you probably haven't heard of, but it doesn't matter that you've not heard of them, because they're the best players in EMEA in terms of their pure resource. They've been absolutely insane. So they've won 4 out of 6 EMEA monthly finals. Very dominant. They've been at the top of the EMEA leaderboards the entire season. I literally couldn't be putting bigger words into them. They've just been absolutely insane. Near enough untouchable. Literally the whole year, people have been calling them robots because they just don't seem to make any mistakes. They play so well as a team, etc, etc. They've really got big hopes to win a World Finals, in my opinion. Hopefully they can bring it home to the EU. But anyhow, in terms of their other statistics as well, they won the most recent ESL Snapdragon Pro Series LAN, which was a couple of months ago, I think 3 months ago or so. So just going to show again that they can perform at LAN, because I think the question mark about them throughout the year was, yeah, they're good online, but can they do good in a LAN setting? Well, they won the most recent LAN. So just going to show that pressure doesn't really phase them. So what is really bad about them at the moment? But we'll go into that right now, because they didn't actually qualify for the recent ESL Snapdragon Pro Series. I think they finished 5th, so just short. They won 3 games in the end. But that's very different to how they've been all year. All year they've been at the top of every single tournament. Maybe a few hiccups, but pretty much 90% of the tournaments they've won them. If not, became like the 2nd place, etc, etc. So recent form definitely is a little bit worrying for them. Maybe people have cracked the code with Zeta. Maybe they've got a bit too complacent and saving some tactics. Maybe even for World Finals, we'll have to see. So in terms of their previous performances in Worlds, well, last year I don't think they actually played together. I think Rama played with Jero and Naui instead. I think Meow might have been on the bench. I can't remember off the top of my head. But they did become really close to beating Zeta 1. I think it was a 3-1, but definitely surprising. I thought they definitely, maybe potentially could have took them to game 5. So very close last Worlds for Jero and Naui. So they've got some, I would say, form on LAN for sure. You know, facing off against Zeta and losing isn't the worst thing in the world. And then also as well, even though they didn't qualify for ESL Masters due to other circumstances, they did go there and scrim some of the best teams in the world, and literally all the pros had such high praise about them, saying how strong they are, how they're one of the best teams in the world. So I don't know, hearing the opinions from pros as well definitely can have some substance when you're making your predictions. In terms of their scrim win rate at the moment, it's around 54%, so a little bit higher than the average. They've been scrimming a lot as well, with over 500 scrim sets, probably even close to 600 right now as I'm actually putting this video out. So they've been scrimming a lot, so getting that draft practice in is very important for them. But again, it's very alarming because recently they lost to Na'Vi and Foot in KSO Cup Masters, which, again, some of the best EMEA teams went to play in this, and they lost 3-0 to both of these. So a month ago, no, that's not really the best at all. And then recently as well, they lost to their fellow group mates as well in Nouns, 3-2 in ESL. So I know it's a little bit hard, but they're one of the favourites on paper, definitely for sure. Now, moving on to STMN. So STMN, these are ones I'm most excited for. I think outside of CR, STMN have the best chance of winning World Finals. I mean, a lot of you guys from NA probably agree as well, but I just really get that X factor about them this year. They've got a really good player in Bobby who's been playing for absolute years, and of course a good friend of mine, so I'm a little bit biased in that sense, but you know, Zara is an insane player as well. Mechanically, he's so gifted. And then Sans as well. You guys are going to be sleeping on him because this guy, if you've seen his Twitter, he has grinded so much more than anyone else. He has like 30 mastery brawlers or something. He lives on the game. He reminds me of a younger version of me. Literally, I used to play 18 hours a day. This guy probably plays like 20 hours a day. It's insane, and he's a very good player, one of the best in the world for sure. Anyways, bigging up the STMN roster. In terms of their stats, then, they've won 2 out of 6 monthly finals in NA West this season. So Luminosity Gaming was in their region. They won the other monthly finals, so not the best showing online, but there's a lot of factors online, especially in NA, that I've got to consider in terms of like latency and stuff like that. I didn't mention it about Tribe, but that also could be a reason as to why things didn't really go their way this season. But they qualified through LCQ, so if you missed out on that, I'd definitely recommend watching some highlights on LCQ in terms of STMN's performance, because it was insane. They've never looked stronger, in my opinion. They had the hardest bracket in LCQ, beating VN from EU, Clash from South America. 2 really strong teams, just destroying them. And then they swept Reject 3-0 in the LCQ finals. So for me, that form just solidifies how strong they are. Sweeping Reject in such a high-pressured scenario, I didn't expect it. I thought Reject would actually beat them, because how can you doubt a Charpe, right? He's one of the best players in the world, but they just swept him like there was some Power League players. So, I mean, no disrespect to, of course, a Charpe, he's the GOAT, but you get what I'm kind of saying. Like, STMN are just so incredibly strong at the moment, but yeah, they've not had the greatest times online, but in LAN settings, they just seem to always turn up. Also in ESL Masters as well, midway through the year, they came 4th. They also beat Crazy Raccoon in the group stages, but then lost them in the 3rd place stages. So it's going to show they can beat the best teams in the world. Crazy Raccoon, Reject, they can beat these type of teams. They also finished 1st in the recent NA ESL Open Finals, so going to show they've got that recency form as well. There's just so many boxes being ticked for STMN. It's actually unbelievable. In terms of scrim rate, though, it's the only thing that's alarming about them, but then again, it's just scrims. I don't really take it with a pinch of salt a little bit, but for the stats with it, 46%, and they've been grinding a lot in terms of the sets played as well. They've played over 500 sets. They've been grinding pretty much as every other team, if not more. So they want this. They look absolutely insane. And then, of course, they've got a lot of world form to back this up as well. So they lost against Zeta 1 last year in the semi-finals. You know, it can't be discredited by that. Zeta 1 insane with side tempo. And then also they lost 3-1 to Totem in the quarterfinals. So you could kind of say that in the biggest stage, they sometimes fall a little bit short, maybe of not what they wanted, but with a different roster with Sans this time, maybe that could give them that little bit more that they needed, of course. Sans still, I always forget, like Sans to me, I feel like he's like a 25-year-old man, but he's actually, I think, like 18, 19. He's very young, so that could definitely give him the X factor, of course, coming through the scene for the first time. And also as well, in terms of MSI, they lost to Zeta Zero, the eventual champions, as well last year. So a lot of different factors to go into it. And then finally for this group, I've been waffling for a while, but you know, I just love talking about Brawl Esports. The last one is Nouns. So Nouns have won 5 out of 6 monthly finals in South America East. So they just dominated their region. They lost the last monthly final though to Clash, but they've just looked absolutely insane. And then for me, I thought, you know, South America, they're not really the strongest. Sometimes underrated, but I think EU are pretty much stronger all the time. But then for the past few months now, they've been boot camping in EU, playing against the EMEA teams in scrims and tournaments, and they've really been going head to toe with these teams, if not looking better than EMEA at the moment. Their recent performances in ESL are pretty much better than EU, and I'm still somewhat underrated them in some way. Like, I don't know, there's so many head twisters in this one. But like I mentioned, they dominated ESL Open Finals recently, finishing joint top. They also beat Zeta in ESL 3-2. So just going to show they've got some head-to-head form a little bit. But in official competitions, I think Zeta are winning 2-1 against them. So that's one thing to bear in mind. We also had last year, Firecrow and Pekka nearly beat the world champions in the round of 16. If you guys remember to that game, I think it was Chasmac Brazil they lost 3-2 in the round of 16, but you know, the world champions nearly went out the first stage. I honestly thought that an upset could have happened. Everyone was predicting Zeta Zero to beat them, so they've got this kind of underdog story about them. Firecrow has also reached the semi-finals in 2021 with Ints, so just going to show, again, he's got that World Finals experience, and they've also had the most sets scrimmed out of every single team in the region with a 52% win rate. So there's a lot of tick boxes as well for Nouns, but just because they're from South America, people just underrate them. Okay, so now we're going to be jumping into the predictions for Group C then. So with all things considered, pretty much every single game near enough is a 50-50 coin flip. Literally, after all the things I've spoke about, trying to give you guys some substance to it. Honestly, you can go by what you truly believe or, of course, what I think will happen. So the first game is Zeta versus Stamina Esports. So this one probably is the best game of every single group, like the hardest one to call. Pretty much an exactly 50-50 near enough. I would say maybe a little bit favored to Stamina, maybe like a 52%, literally the smallest of margins, only because of recent form. In my opinion, no, Zeta haven't looked the best in EU competitions at the moment, but at the same time, they've still been looking fantastic in scrims and whatever else. And, you know, Stamina is Stamina. They're just insane on LAN and also just really good at drafting. So, pretty hard to call with this one. Again, can go either way. But I think just narrowly, like in 3-2 fashion, probably Stamina. Again, a little bit biased maybe because I'm good friends with Bobby. But I just feel like their recent LAN performance, I just envision them winning World Finals. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I think they have a fantastic chance. And they should be able to beat Zeta. Hopefully, I'm putting faith in them. But now, into the next game. So it's Zeta versus Nouns. So purely by how things are actually going in EMEA competitions at the moment, this could honestly be another 50-50. Nouns are looking actually better than Zeta in these third-party tournaments like ESL, for example. But I'm still, I don't know. I'm just still more convinced by Zeta overall. I just think throughout the year, they've been so dominant. They've looked fantastic in drafting. They've just looked so good as a team. They've looked like robots. So I think if they can get back to that level again, and if they've proven on LAN as well, I think they should be able to take this one. But again, don't be surprised if Nouns win it. I know it might be a little bit of a cop-out saying these sort of things, but it just honestly is the truth. It's so 50-50. But I'd have to go with Zeta. I think on paper, Zeta do have a little bit more class about them. But you could quite easily go Nouns if you fancy a little bit of an underdog. And then finally, for the last game in this group, we have Nouns versus Stamina. So again, a very close game. I think this is a little bit more favored in terms of Stamina, in my opinion. I think they just have a little bit more about them. But again, don't be surprised if Nouns Esports win. Literally, it can be a flip of a coin on this one as well. But I'd say just by pure odds and statistics, I would go for Stamina as well. And unfortunately, Nouns not winning one. But honestly, if I went through the Group C, all the games played and Nouns was top of the group, I still wouldn't be surprised as well, because I'm very, very impressed with their gameplay overall. But going through Group C again, so I've got Stamina just to narrowly beat Zeta, and then Zeta to narrowly beat Nouns, and then Stamina to beat Nouns as well. So very close Group C. It could be a very spicy one. Okay, so now we're jumping into the final group of day 2 and just the final bit of group stage overall. And again, we're set for a banger. So day 2 is just so spicy. I could probably go 0 for 6, honestly. That's how tough this is. So starting off with Crazy Raccoon. Do they actually need an introduction though? Seriously. They're like back-to-back world champions. They've got so many world champions on their team. It's a joke. They've got the best 2 players of all time. Literally, these 2 are the GOATs behind, of course, a Charpe. Probably it's like the 3rd GOAT. But Tensei and Side Tempo, they're just above everyone else. They're just so insane. I just don't know how I'm going to go against them. Like, you guys are going to be crazy to go against them in some way. But then again, maybe this is the year that people dethrone them. So, in terms of the statistics overall this season, they've won 4 out of 6 monthly finals in East Asia and finished top in terms of points. So, they did dominate their region pretty swiftly. In terms of points overall, I don't think they had the biggest margin, but you know, in terms of just winning 4 out of 6. That's still pretty dominant. But the only team actually representing East Asia this year. I think most years have had a couple of representatives, but this year just them, because Reject and Chazmac, they actually lost in LCQ, and I thought they had solid chances of, you know, being one of the best teams in the world. So I was quite surprised by that one. So you could take a few things from that. You could take maybe that East Asia's level overall has dropped, maybe, because if Reject and Chazmac can't qualify, you know, with Crazy Raccoon only, you know, ahead a few points, maybe their level could have dropped. That's the only question mark in my opinion, because we're so used to East Asia dominating. But then again, just look at the accomplishments to speak for themselves, because you have Tensai and Saitampo winning. I know I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, by the way, but they won 2021 in dominant fashion. You know, I faced against them a lot in scrims, and they were just untouchable. I've never seen a more dominant team in my life. And then 2022, a lot of people for the World Finals were saying, oh, there's other teams that have chances, but you know, I never really considered many other teams to have chances, and they again just proved why they're so strong. Tensai won it in 2022 with his other teammates, but then Saitampo and Moya, they came second. So just going to show that they're just equally as good, near enough, because they've reached the World Finals final, and yeah, they're pretty close with it. And also as well in that year, Saitampo and Moya won the mid-season invitational, so they've got LAN experience. Of course, they've won multiple things. Moya's won multiple things, so if you had a question mark about Moya, he's just as good as these guys as well. He's insane. Also as well, they were third place in ESL Masters, which was around, I think, May time. So that's still pretty decent. Not the level that we expected. I expected them to win that as well, but they can take some learnings from it. You can't, they're not robots, right? They can't win every single game, but I'd still expect it from them because they're that good. Also as well, they've always just been known in the community as the best in the world. But one thing as well, there's a couple of drawbacks to them, but I think the main one for me, and which everyone is talking about in terms of their biggest weakness, has to be the draft. So you wonder why draft is so important. I won't go into too much detail, because of course draft is like half of the game actually. Like if you can get a good draft, you can pretty much win the game as long as you don't make any big errors. So you know, half the game can be won in the draft, so you got to be careful of how things are done. And when I've been watching them in monthly finals and also ESL Masters, their drafts have been terrible. Like, even though I'm not a pro player anymore, I can see the glaring weaknesses in their draft. So maybe they fixed them with recent scrims, but I don't know, their meta is just a little bit awkward, and I just think the meta favors maybe EU a little bit more with Hypercharges, but we'll see. And they also have the highest scrim win rate with 56%, which I'm not surprised about, because they're just always really strong in scrims. So Crazy Raccoon, you know, I would say maybe probably the favorites for this. We'll have to wait and see. But next up, we have Foot Esports. So, in terms of Foot's story across the year, it has been pretty troublesome, I won't lie. There's been a lot of ups and downs. They've won no monthly finals. I think they've had a second place, or at least close to, you know, the top for a little while. But they finished third in terms of the points overall in the EMEA. So, nothing to really, you know, you can't really be sad about that, finishing third in such a strong region. You know, they're a bit disappointed that they didn't pick up a couple of monthly finals, but they definitely had their showings throughout the year, especially with how hard it was at the beginning of the year. There was roster changes with Lane and other stuff like that. So I think in the end, though, they've really been hitting form. And for me, again, I might be biased because I really love Foot. I love everyone on the Foot team, and of course Strage. But, you know, put my bias aside, they're honestly looking the strongest in terms of scrims, in terms of recent ESL performances, in terms of everything, the draft. They're looking fantastic. So I'm hoping they can replicate that form on stage. In terms of recent competitive events, they lost the recent finals in the Queso Cup Masters to SK Gaming after a loser bracket run, which was actually really good. And they actually were the #1 seed coming into it as well. So they've got some good form in third-party tournaments for sure. They also came second in the most recent ESL LAN. So just going to show, as a team, they're good on LAN. They only lost out to Zeta, who of course are just insane as well. So they've got some good LAN experience as well. They also beat SK Gaming, who of course are in their group, 3-0 on LAN. So just going to show, in that environment, they can definitely knuckle down and beat one of the best teams in Europe. And there's some, of course, rivalry with that, but we'll talk about that later on. In terms of recent ESL Open performances, so what we've been watching throughout the last month is all of the best teams in EU compete every single week, and they beat SK Gaming 3-0 again. So just going to show the recency against SK Gaming. They've had the better end of them, and it's not like it's close either. 3-0, 2-3-0 sweeps. That is quite convincing. And also, as well, they've lost all 3 quarterfinals. Well, all 3 of them lost in the quarterfinals last year. They was on different teams, though. Semantic was on SK. They lost against Tribe. And, of course, Drage and Lanat was on Tribe Gaming EU. They lost against Zeta Zero. So, I mean, they both lost against good teams, but, of course, they probably hoped for a lot better. And, of course, Drage, Semantic, and Lanat also were in the 2021 Worlds. And Semantic and Drage lost in the round of 16. You know, I was with Drage, so I know that round of 16 exit will hurt. And Lanane quarterfinals. So they haven't, any of them, really got to, like, semi-finals in the World Finals. But I think maybe this year could be the year, because they've got a 55% scrim win rate as well. I know, again, it's only scrims, but that's the second highest win rate in scrims overall. So if they can replicate that scrim form into tournaments and just keep with their strategy and the draft, which I know they're fantastic with, I think they really do have a chance. They're looking very strong. Guys, jumping into the final member of Group D, we have SK Gaming. So if you've watched any Brawl esports, you would have heard of these guys before, because they've just dominated the EU scene. They've been the titans of Brawl esports for a while. They've always fell short on the main stage, so unfortunately, maybe this year might be a little bit different. But in terms of how SK Gaming have been this year, it's been a very bumpy road to this stage. I don't think they qualified for the first 2 monthly finals, so that is literally a third of the monthly finals throughout the year, you know, trying to accumulate points and of course make it towards the World Finals. They missed out on a third of it, which is unheard of in terms of when you qualified for World Finals. Pretty much World Finalist teams, near enough, you know, they win a couple of monthly finals, they qualify for every single one at least, but they didn't qualify the first 2, so they had a huge comeback story, probably the best comeback story in the whole of Brawl esports in my opinion, because at the beginning of the year they just didn't really look like they were too interested. There was a lot of setbacks, probably a lot of internal issues. I had some roster changes. There was just so much going on, but you can put all of that behind you, because now they look very, very strong and honestly a candidate to win the whole thing. So in terms of LCQ, then, this is where I was insanely impressed with them, because they had one of the strongest groups, the second strongest group. They had Chazmac Gaming EA on their team, East Asia, so a lot of people were favoring them to just run through LCQ and be one of the favorite stats for World Finals. They looked very strong throughout the year, and for SK Gaming to just walk through them was just insane to see, and they just walked through the whole group. So it was very impressive from SK Gaming. You know, I know they had it in them, but maybe not in that fashion. It was just so convincing. It was ridiculous. And of course, they just waltzed through to get the World Finals ticket as well. So I think they were the second strongest team in LCQ behind Stamina, which again is no disgrace to just be slightly weaker than them in terms of form. Very, very strong. They also, on the back of that, then I think won Queso Cup Masters. So throughout the year, they've been competing in Queso Cup, and then this is like their big Masters event, and they beat Foot. So they're one of the biggest rivals, pretty good on the main stage. However, things have took a little bit of a tumble in terms of their recent form. So recently, the most recent tournament going on is ESL, which I keep referring to, the Open Finals, and they didn't qualify for the top 4, which is a huge disappointment for a team like SK Gaming. And, you know, it is a little bit concerning, I'll have to say. I know, obviously, their full focus won't be on ESL with Worlds coming up, but it's still a little bit disappointing because, of course, you don't want to lose, right? Like, you definitely want to qualify for something like ESL. And, yeah, the thing about them as well is that they only beat the worst teams in a tournament. Like, no disrespect to Humble and Queso, but, you know, they only won 2 games, and it was against them. They lost against all the other 5 fiercer teams. So a little bit disappointed in their recent performances, because, you know, people like Bobby and other pro players were saying like SK Gaming were actually like the best in the EMEA. So maybe they can just put that bad form behind them. They probably took some learning lessons. That's one thing that SK do really good in the past, by the way, is they learn from their defeats really well, and they have some good strategies, so don't underestimate them. And in terms of ESL Masters as well, they lost in the groups. Unfortunately, they had Stamina and Crazy Raccoon in their group, so it can't be disgraced, but that was with Guille. It was with a different teammate to what they have now. Guille is insane, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, different roster can have different outcomes. So SK Gaming, don't underestimate, could honestly be a Worlds contender. Okay, so now we're going on to predictions for Group D then. Again, it's just so difficult to call. Really, really is. I feel like I'm going with my head on a lot of these, but you guys can go with your heart or whatever you believe. But again, Crazy Raccoon versus SK Gaming. I think SK Gaming have the potential to upset Crazy Raccoon for sure, especially with the drafts. But then again, in ESL recently, the drafts have been very weird with SK Gaming. So maybe if they've sorted things out in scrims, again, I'm not behind the scenes. I don't know how they're really coping. But if they can get some good drafts behind them, they can definitely upset Crazy Raccoon. But if I was to put statistics on it, unfortunately, I'd have to say maybe like 55%, 60% Crazy Raccoon. You just can't argue the fact that, you know, Tensai, two-time world champion, Saitampo, the most gifted player of all time. It's going to be very difficult for SK Gaming to beat them. But, you know, I just have to go statistics. Crazy Raccoon, I think, will take it against SK Gaming on paper. And then next up, we have another really tough matchup. We have Crazy Raccoon versus Foot Esports. So, again, just like SK Gaming, I think Foot are in a little bit of a better form, have a little bit better chance of beating Crazy Raccoon, in my opinion. But at the same time, we're kind of yet to really see Foot Esports win something big in terms of against a really big team. Like, there's a lot of these players, like, of course, I love them, no disrespect to them, but they haven't yet beat that big teams for me to say, like, oh yeah, they can just go on and win worlds 100%. So maybe this is their statement piece. This is what I'm trying to say. So if they can beat Crazy Raccoon, I'd honestly have them to win world finals. But it's a big task. It is Crazy Raccoon. And for the sake of me trying to get as many points as possible, I'd have to go with Crazy Raccoon as well. I just feel like Crazy Raccoon have to win one of those two games at least, right? So if you double down on them, like, surely they're not going home in the first day. So you kind of guaranteed 100 points in some sense, in my opinion. I just think Crazy Raccoon are just a bit better than, well, I mean, the two-time world champion Tensai on the team. I can't go against him. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit boring, but it's just how it is. And then for the final one, SK Gaming versus Foot Esports. So I'm telling you right now, if you're still watching at the end of this video, you need to watch this game. This game is going to be one of the best games of the whole weekend. There's a rivalry between this, you know, rivalries in Brawl Esports. They've been so good, you know, SK Gaming versus Tribe, and there's been a lot of other ones down the line, like Tribe Gaming EU versus Navi. That was a big rivalry. There's just been a lot, right? Stamina versus Tribe in the past. There's been so many rivalries, and this one is very spicy because Drage, he's been trash talking, you know, Chaos, he's been trash talking back. And this could be the decider because I feel like both teams probably will lose against Crazy Raccoon. And if they both lose, of course, whoever loses this last game goes home. So everything on the line. In my personal opinion, though, just because of how results have gone recently, I have to favor Foot Esports. Again, you might call me biased because I'm friends with most people on Foot Esports, but I'm not friends with all of them. But I don't know, recent results, 3-0 for esports in ESL, 3-0 on ESL LAN. There's just not much really for me in the head-to-head saying that SK Gaming are going to win, but they can. They definitely can. If you support SK Gaming, you know, go ahead and vote them. But I just think Foot Esports will have it in them. I think they have some insane strategies behind them. I think Drage is just the mastermind behind it all. I think he'll be able to clutch up in this one. So that's going to be it for day 2 in terms of predictions and stuff. Again, I appreciate you guys watching towards the end if you have, but you know, you can tell how passionate I'm about Brawl Esports. You know, I really hope I'm involved in it some way next year in terms of casting, analyst, whether it's coach, playing, I don't know. I need to be involved because I just love talking about this type of stuff and I feel like I'm very informed. So hopefully you guys can get some good rewards with this. Again, I'll go through the predictions if you're unsure. So in terms of the final predictions, then we have Zeta versus Stamina. I think I went with Stamina there. Again, that could be 50-50. I can't even remember the top of my head what I went with. That's how close that game is. And then I believe I went for Zeta versus Nouns. And then I went for Stamina versus Nouns. So that's going to be Group C. And then Group D, I went with Crazy Raccoon to beat both SK and Foot. And then I went with Foot to beat SK Gaming. So that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down your predictions in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys next time.